Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel News live stream on this, a Thursday, December 9th, 2021. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you about my co-host. You know what, folks? It is only 16 days until Christmas Day, but it always feels like Christmas with SGR. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I always worry that you're going to have a stroke or blow a capillary in your eyeball or something when you say Khaleesi, because you do it with such passion. But every woman deserves an introduction like I get every time we're on the live stream. So thanks.
Well, you know what? I'm kind of hopeful I'll get a stroke. I'm ready to check out of this crazy world, to tell you the truth, Sheila. And speaking of craziness, I see you're wearing one of my all-time favorite shirts of our Supreme Leader.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe, AD, this is a good time to talk about the store, but let me just move my microphone a little bit. This is our True Don't shirt. And I kind of like it because it's friendly. You know, it's mocking, but it's gentle. His eyes are crossed. He's got a clown nose on because he's a complete and total idiot. But it's not violent. It's not crass. It's just sort of good-natured, making him look like the absolute clown shoe that he is. And this shirt is available at rebelnewsstore.com. So that's our Rebel News store, and you'll find all kinds of merchandise on there. The Freedom Isn't Free, that's one of our most popular T-shirts because it was great for Canada Day. It was great for Remembrance Day, but it's great generally all the time, especially if you're in one of those workplaces that does Red Friday to honor our veterans. But the thing I want to tell you about the Rebel News store is that it's a great place to do some Christmas shopping for your friends and family, and even the people that you want to like spite buy for, your liberal auntie and uncle who wear masks when they're alone together walking down the street. You can get them something for spite here. We've got Let's Go Brandon, the Vax Scan. The thing I should tell you, though, is that if you are going to order, 2 pieces of advice. Use your discount code. It's Sheila10 for 10% off your purchase. You can only use that once. So if you've already used it, thank you. And if you'd like to buy more, go ahead and use David's coupon code. Yeah, there's my shirt. If you want to use David's coupon code, if you've used mine, it's Menzies10.
Yeah, I am forever the backup goalie, the guy on the bench waiting for the starter to break a leg or something, and then, okay, Menzies, you can go in now, and the game's lost anyways. But you know what, Sheila, as much as you pleased me wearing that T-shirt, you kind of triggered me by, again, referring to July 1st as Canada Day. Please, please, my Christmas wish, it is Dominion Day. This was an act of vandalism by Papa Trudeau back in 1982, changing the name without a quorum in the House of Commons on the last day Parliament was sitting. In other words, business as usual if you're part of Clan Trudeau. So it will and forever be Dominion Day for me. Thank you.
Okay, David, but I'm just going to let you know that that was changed when I was 3 years old, so I don't remember it any other way. And I want to tell everybody, if you are going to order something from the Rebel News store, especially that Freedom Isn't Free shirt, if you want to wear it for Dominion Day, you do need to place your order before or on or before December 14th for Christmas delivery. So if you've been on the fence about stuff, it's time to pull the trigger.
There you go. And speaking of pulling the trigger, Sheila, you usually at this point tell everybody what we're going to do in terms of the show, and of course give an advance warning that at some point we have to bid adieu to YouTube. Yes. It was just funny. The store guy was just calling me right in the middle of me talking about the store. All right. The work never ends for Sheila. This is the Rebel Daily News live stream. It used to just be hosted on Friday by Ezra Levant and just on YouTube. A lot of things changed in the past year. The pandemic struck. We were all sort of grounded. Rebels couldn't really travel to cover the stories that we wanted to. And the news was changing constantly. You'd wake up in the morning and you'd have one restriction, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was some kind of new variant that ruined your life, and you couldn't do the things you wanted to do, and you were all sent home to work from home and work remotely. And so we thought, what a good way to talk about what's happening is sort of impromptu, just as the news breaks. So that's where this grew from, and we increased the live stream to 5 full work days. And Ezra got too busy with other things within the company, so we just take turns hosting it. One thing that happened to us, though, is it used to just be on YouTube, but then Joe Biden got elected. Let's go, Brandon. And YouTube completely demonetized us. They made sure that we were ad unsafe before, but then they said, no, you can't even have super chats. So while I know it's ridiculous. So while YouTube doesn't want us there anymore, that's a great reason for us to stay there. But there's also 1.6-ish million of you who watch us from time to time over there, even the hate watchers. I know you're there. So we're not going to abandon you. But there will come a time during the broadcast today that we will have to leave YouTube, the censorship platform of YouTube, and move over exclusively to the other 3 platforms upon which we are also simultaneously broadcasting, and those are Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U. And on those platforms, you can actually support the work that we do completely willingly, unlike what Justin Trudeau makes you do with the mainstream media. So on Rumble, it's called a rant. On Odyssey, you can leave us a hyper chat in a couple of different ways, in regular currency or in their library cryptocurrency. And you can also tip us on Super U. And what I love about those platforms is they say that they're politically neutral, which is all that I want. I don't want to care about their political leanings, and I don't want them to care about mine. I want them to be the digital public square, and it seems as though that's what's happening over there. So we will have to leave YouTube at one point because we are going to talk about things that YouTube says you are not allowed to talk about. They're going to give you a little bit too much to think. And so we'll have to leave them behind, and hopefully you'll join us on those other platforms. Indeed. Well, let's get right down to business. I see, Sheila, CERB is back in the news again. And, my feeling about CERB, I mean, certainly it's hard going back a year ago when the government forced people out of their livelihoods through no fault of their own, that they wouldn't get compensated. There's that. Secondly, I really think, and I've talked to politicians out there who have told me off the record that they feel the CERB program was the reason Trudeau got elected again. Again, almost a near majority, but thankfully a minority. Because, hey, listen, there is a critical mass of people out there that despite the scandals, despite the horrible policies, they were, you know, like the Dire Straits song goes, Sheila, money for nothing and chips for free, right? They were sitting at home taking in that money and, hey, I'm okay, Jack. I hope you're okay, too. But now CERB is in the news because amongst the recipients, we learned, were gangbangers? Sheila, tell me it ain't so.
Who could have seen this coming? Yeah, this was the old foot in the water with the universal basic income, where we encourage people to not work as hard as possible and not achieve their dreams and their goals and just do the bare minimum. That always works, right? And so that's sort of what I think what CERB was meant to be. And now it's causing labor shortages, particularly in food service and hospitality, because again, why bother? Right? Why bother? Why bother going to work to make $3,000 or $3,500 a month when you can just stay home, do nothing, and take in two? Right? There are people out there. There are people out there for whom that is perfectly acceptable. Most people, I don't know, but there is a substantial portion of the population who don't see dignity in work. And I can't
imagine a worse fate, Sheila. I know. If you've been incapacitated, you can't do your job. If the company's folded, you can't find work. That's one thing. But the idea that there are jobs begging and you would rather sit at home doing goodness knows what while you're collecting a paycheck, not from the government, but from your fellow Canadians. That's what it boils down to. At a time when this government is printing money like it's confetti being manufactured for whatever team Tom Brady is playing for. This is terrible. I think all of the people here at Rebel, and I'm sure our viewers as well, have a strong work ethic. You want to put in an honest day's work for an honest day's paycheck. I think that gives you fulfillment in life, as opposed to gaming the system to get an income that you really don't need, because there is a job for you out there somewhere. But like you said, Sheila, for whatever reason, too many people can't be bothered.
Sure. And before we get to this news, I have a Sheila's psychological analysis behind this, and it's completely anecdotal. But I think there are a lot of people who were given a lot of things in life by their parents, whatever. And now they perfectly, for them, it's perfectly acceptable to transfer that, you know, constantly being the recipient of things from their parents to now mom and dad or the government. And also they think, oh, since I have, you know, I'm an overeducated, useless person, I'm above the job at the coffee shop. I'm going to wait for the $100,000 a year job to just land on my lap because I deserve it. Mom and dad told me I deserve it. I always got a ribbon, even when I failed. So now I expect to fail upward. And until such time, I don't see any dignity in doing a job. And so they'd rather just stay home. I've never met a person who's been poor with this sort of attitude that, you know, like more often than not, someone who's been poor, they don't like getting the handout, and work has dignity. I think it's the people who have been given everything their whole lives for which this is acceptable.
You know what, Sheila, I couldn't have said it any better. When my grandfather in 1946 moved from Scotland to Canada, and he was trained in the engineering profession, he couldn't get the kind of job he really wanted in Canada, so he became a site manager for a garbage dump. And what he always used to say to me, Sheila, is the work is dirty, but the money's clean. And I am telling you, I don't care if you work behind a fast food counter. I don't care if you clean toilets for a living. There is no shame in any honest job. No shame at all. The people I have contempt for are those who are too lazy to work and game the system, not for people doing the dirty work.
Exactly. Which brings us to the story of the day.
Yes.
Stephanie Kusi, she is a Conservative MP from Calgary. A street gang in Montreal has fraudulently obtained, who could have seen this problem coming, just giving out money with no strings attached? Of course. Has fraudulently obtained $100,000+ in CERB payments to purchase illegal firearms.
Wow.
Was the government aware that this was taking place? This is unacceptable and must be urgently addressed. See my joint letter from Raquel Dancho. Anyways, let's read into this. She sends the letter to the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development, and Disability Inclusion, so the person who oversees the CERB payments that were without strings attached. And then they're like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have done this. Now, after we told everybody to just run out and apply for it, whether you qualified for it or not, let's try to get some of it back. I mean, none of this makes any sense. The only people who did well during the pandemic, I think, are Big Pharma and the CRA. We're hiring to deal with this problem. But anyways, we're writing to you regarding reports that a street gang in Montreal fraudulently obtained tax dollars via the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, to purchase illegal firearms. In a recent ruling by the Quebec Superior Court judge, the Honorable Yvonne Poulin, he found that a street gang in Montreal obtained $100,000 to fund illegal firearm smuggling operations. In addition, a recent La Presse article stated a few months ago a source close to the criminal community, that's an interesting way of calling an informant, told La Presse that members of a street gang in northeast Montreal had found a flaw in the attribution system of CERB and thus fraudulently obtained tens of thousands of dollars, which would have been used to buy firearms on the black market. There are a number of questions regarding the issue of CERB being used by gangs to purchase firearms. Yeah, you think? Were you aware this was taking place? If so, how long were you aware? If you were aware, why did you not take action on this sooner? I think this is interesting because the federal government was literally giving money to gangsters, no strings attached, to buy black market firearms that were likely trafficked across the incredibly porous border in Quebec with the United States. So we've got a whole host of problems there: gun trafficking, open borders, and not being tough enough on gang violence, and just handing out money willy-nilly, no strings attached. But what has been the government's response to this? To reopen the porous border, and to outlaw a bunch of firearms that were legally obtained by people like me.
You know, it's bizarro Superman planet, Sheila, and you've touched upon the key question. Now that we know about this problem, now that this is being publicly exposed, what are the Justin Trudeau Liberals going to do? Are they going to clamp down, get that money back, get those illegal handguns off the streets? Or, plan B, are they going to pull an Omar Khadr? You know, if we fight this in the court, it's going to end up costing more than $10.5 million in compensation to this murderous terrorist. So we're going to just rebrand ourselves on this file as fiscal conservatives, cut the kid a check, and move on. That's the issue here. Are they going to pull that, you know, for us to take action and try to claw back all that CERB money, it's going to actually cost more money than what we paid off? That's what I want to keep my eye on in the days and weeks ahead, Sheila.
You know, it's funny because I've been sort of watching this and I'm seeing, you know, where they're clawing back the CERB payments. And it is in the strangest places. Like, they're clawing it back from people who made under $30,000. They're saying they illegally obtained it, but they didn't notice that a street gang, people with no fixed addresses, all known criminal associates, probably hadn't filed taxes in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. They were fine to issue those and didn't even realize any of it was going on until it ends up in court, and they're saying, where did the money come from for all these guns involved in illegal trafficking? How did this money end up in bank accounts that was able to buy a bunch of guns? And then Montreal sees a surge in gun crime that the federal government funded, I guess. It's just strange where they're focusing on how to retrieve this money and where they aren't retrieving it from. And it says a lot about the federal government and their sympathy for the devil, as it turns out.
Sheila, they are cutting checks for hardened criminals for them to buy illegal guns, which is the real problem when it comes to crime, not duck hunters in Saskatchewan, for goodness sake, that might have a rifle that looks like very triggering.
Looks cool. Looks cool. You mean cool.
and the hypocrisy is that if you, our viewers, have the temerity to pay our taxes 1 second after midnight, April 30th, the penalties and the interest kick in right away. You know, here's the new slogan for Justin Trudeau's Canada, Sheila. Welcome to Canada. We reward the takers and we penalize the makers.
Yeah, we've seen this with Alexa's reporting.
Yeah.
Canadians cannot travel around our own country, can't get out of our own country, can't get back into our own country unless we submit ourselves to testing or vaccination. And not even testing if you want to travel, just vaccination. But you can walk across that porous border through which guns are trafficked from upstate New York, no problem. Surge in violent crime in Montreal, nobody can make the connection that the guns are coming from the United States. And they're being illegally obtained. They just open the border right back up.
Sheila, it's worse than you're portraying it, because, you know, the way it works out is the illegal alien comes to the border and the RCMP officer says, stop, if you cross that line, you'll be under arrest. And they cross it because they want to be under arrest, right? That gets the process moving. So they're under arrest, and two things happen. The Mountie turns into a member of the Royal Canadian Bellhop Police and carries the suitcases like the migrant is checking into the Ritz-Carlton. And then when they are put under arrest, and I was asking Alexa off camera about this because she was asking this question, why aren't they handcuffed? It is procedure, Sheila, to be handcuffed. I know that because I've been arrested for political crimes and thought crimes by various police forces, and I'm always handcuffed, and the handcuffs are always too tight, by the way, and I'm thrown in the back of the cruiser, cuffed up, but illegal aliens are not? Why does the procedure go out the window with people we don't even know who they are, where they came from? Forget about COVID. What about their medical history at large? What have they contracted in the past that they're bringing into Canada? But explain that to me, Sheila. Why are they not cuffed?
I have no idea. Also, why are Canadian citizens, at least during the COVID jails time, and I see that they have reared their ugly heads again, Canadian citizens were being forcibly abducted into these COVID jails and then handed the bill for their own incarceration, particularly when they were healthy. If you showed up at the airport and said, I got COVID, you were sent home to quarantine. You didn't have to go to the COVID jails because the COVID jails were bizarrely only for healthy people. But if you were an illegal migrant entering into the country illegally, untested, unvaccinated, God knows what, just grabbing your luggage and walking across, you get taken off to a quarantine hotel and you don't pay for it. Yep. We do. And that's a problem. We could dwell on this story forever, David. I know you probably have a lot to say, but we should keep moving because we're 21 minutes into the show and we've talked about one thing.
Okay, then.
Sorry.
How's that for an economy of words?
We should talk about what Russia's up to because I say it all the time. I'm not sure if we won the Cold War. Like, in retrospect, I'm not sure because Marxists have taken over our universities, our governments, our major institutions, and it's cultural Marxism, but really politics is sort of downstream of culture anyways. And Putin is back. The Soviet Union really is back, and they are sending warnings to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow of, quote, dangerous consequences for any provocations near Russia's borders just one day after Biden spoke with Putin. You're telling me that Biden made a diplomatic mistake? That is hard to believe. it's hard for me to believe this.
Yeah, how can Mr. Perfect screw up yet again? We have a little video before we get into this subject, Sheila, so let's check it out.
Yeah, please.
News alert now. We are just getting word from our own Jackie Heinrich that the Russian Foreign Ministry has sent a note to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, warning of consequences of provocations near Russia's borders. And the spokesperson is remarking on that. Jackie Heinrich now live at the White House on the breaking news. Jackie.
Hey, Sandra. Well, we've heard Russian President Vladimir Putin telling the U.S. basically to stop running missions close to its borders for the last few days. But this note that was sent to the U.S. Embassy does come right after the Biden-Putin summit, during which Putin told Biden that basically the Russian buildup of troops along the Ukrainian border is purely defensive. They're trying to spin this as Russia is facing aggression from NATO countries, and they're just responding to that, the idea that they're going to invade Ukraine is fake news, that kind of thing. That's the Russian spin on it. But this note that was sent to the embassy, they've detailed what it includes. It says, in connection with these provocative actions, Moscow sent a warning about the dangerous consequences of reckless behavior, enumerating recent incidents that didn't end in tragedy due to sheer luck and quick thinking of Russian pilots. So they are really trying to basically get out in front of this and say, we are holding firm on our stance that we are purely in a defensive mode, and pushing back on what you're seeing come from France, from the UK, from Biden here in the US, and from Italy, really banding together to push Russia not to invade Ukraine. Sandra?
Okay, Jackie Heinrich reporting on that from the White House for us. Jackie, thank you.
You know, Sheila, it's funny because it's, I think, one of the most overlooked, underreported stories in the world right now, what's happening on the Ukraine-Russian border. That is, if you ask military analysts, the #1 hotspot in the world currently, and there's many hotspots. But, you know, again, given that it's Biden in the White House and you're seeing this saber rattling, not just there, but in all the other hotspots, Sheila, did you feel a lot more safer about a year ago when there was another person occupying that White House? It's funny how things are flaring up all over the planet right now under the watch of sleepy Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, we had the Abraham peace accords unfolding under Donald Trump, you know, flights from Israel to Gulf states, which I never thought we would see in our lifetime. That was happening. And then quickly, things are devolving, particularly with Russia. I was just doing some quick Googling around, and Putin's general is warning that Russia's nuke launchers and hypersonic missiles are ready for action.
Yeah, but it's
like
only for
I said,
self-defense.
I'm not sure we won the Cold War. I'm not sure we won the Cold War, because this seems like just anything that we could have read at the height of the Cold War. We're back at it. Yeah.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the same neighborhood, who could have absolutely imagined even mere months ago that Biden would not only leave Afghanistan, would not only strand American allies and Americans in Afghanistan, but would give the Taliban a modern army. You know, everything from tanks to $50 million Apache helicopters. I was just going to leave them behind. Surely they won't use it to hurt anyone. This is a disgrace, Sheila. And again, it makes me pine for the days when we had, and the world knew we had, someone who was strong in the White House. And by the way, when I say strong, Donald Trump was a dove. He was not a hawk. America didn't get into any unnecessary wars in his 4 years. A few terrorists were justifiably assassinated, but that's it. And under Biden, I can see wars happening. I mean, this is very concerning what's happening on the Ukraine-Russian border. And I personally think, Sheila, that after the Winter Olympics in China, I fear for what's going to happen to Taiwan. I really do. I think the only reason China is restraining itself is it doesn't want an all-out boycott for justifiable means, i.e. invading Taiwan. And they're playing nice, but once March comes around, I think we're going to see a turn of events there.
Well, and what is the American military doing in the midst of all of this? Firing high-level people within the military who served with distinction because they reject critical race theory and the new policies within the military that say all white people are evil. That's what's happening. So I'm just reading this article that was in the the New York Post way back in May, and there was foresight to all of this. It says the woke takeover of the U.S. military endangers us all, and here we are. Russia's going to take over the world, threatening nukes, and we're like, no, white people are evil.
It is beyond the pale, Sheila, and I can only imagine in the war rooms, whether you're in Russia or China or the various terrorist entities that want to burn America to the ground, they must be laughing like they just saw a dozen Seinfeld episodes. This whole idea that as there's this buildup all around the world, while China is becoming the biggest Navy in the world, while the U.S. Navy starts to rust, that the #1 mandate is to teach critical race theory to the troops. The idea that woke generals, these are the guys that are going to be wearing the 4 stars, not the actual generals that know what to do. Again, this is the Democrat Party in action, Sheila, and it is why I think, I'm going to make another prediction for next year, that when the midterms come around, we're going to see a generational historic loss of the Democrats, because I think the vast majority of Americans are absolutely fed up with this. As the saying goes, Mama Bear has woken up, and she ain't happy. And we saw with the elections in November, when you saw Democratic strongholds go down to defeat, you're going to see much more of that next year, because this is not the American character. This is not the American spirit, Sheila, to, sit back and be victimized and be mandated to read material that is all about self-hatred and racism. That's not the majority of the Americans. I know there's a subsection of loony leftists, but most of America, thank God, is not like that.
No, and Canada is that much worse, by the way.
Well, I know, yeah.
I'm currently reading through an access to information document package that we got back on the Navy, changing the names of the ranks from seaman to something less, I guess, offensive and more gender neutral, which I think is kind of funny, because the military right now is plagued with sexual harassment allegations, and yet maybe keep your hands to yourself. That's what ladies in the military would appreciate. They don't really care so much about the name changes of stuff. Maybe just leave them alone to do their jobs. And it starts, frankly, way before that. I've seen this creeping into the cadet program that's really demoralizing some kids. And so I worry. I worry about the future of the Canadian military, because it's just going to be a bunch of woke people whose feelings get hurt. And how do you expect them to have the bravery and intestinal fortitude to defend your country and your country's ideals abroad?
Yeah, given the choice of a nice woke army that goes into the battlefield and is defeated every time versus a politically incorrect army that knows how to fight, I can tell you which decision I'm making, Sheila.
Yeah. We should poke along, though, to the next thing, because I've been actually, as you were talking, sort of, if people saw me kind of distracted, I was trying to figure out something here. And maybe if the viewers at home know, super chat us or hyper chat us or Rumble rant us and let me know if you can find this information. I'm 99% sure of it, but I'd like to be able to confirm it, because I would hate to be accused of spreading fake news. But this next story is insane, but so perfectly New Zealand these days that it is unsurprising. New Zealand to ban cigarettes for future generations. And let me just preface this before I go on. I'm a non-smoker. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life.
Me too.
I'm obsessive about cardio health. I love my heart. I love my lungs. I like them to be juicy and spongy. And so I've never smoked a cigarette. But I reserve the right for the rest of you to smoke a cigarette if you so choose. You know how bad cigarettes are for you. If you want to do it, it's none of my business. Don't scold me for my Friday night beer. I won't scold you for your cigarettes. This is your business. If you want to pay the sin taxes and take the risk with your spongy lungs, the only ones God gave you, it's none of my business. You're a grown up, make your own choice, just like vaccines. So anyways, but New Zealand says, oh, no. The mother state has decided what's good for you, and anyone born after 2008 will not be able to buy cigarettes or tobacco products in their lifetime. Are you hearing that, black market traffickers and cigarettes? Things are about to get pretty lucrative for you, because that's what happens when you ban this sort of stuff. Anyways, New Zealand will ban the sale of tobacco to its next generation in a bid to eventually phase out smoking. Anyone born after 2008 will not be able to buy cigarettes or tobacco products, so I guess chew, in their lifetime, under a law expected to be enacted next year. We want to make sure that young people never start smoking. You've scared young people forever. They know it does gross things to your teeth. They've seen the pictures that we put on cigarette package labels of the person with their nose gone or their jaw gone and like the black lungs that look like beef jerky. They know it's bad. We all know it's bad. If people want to do it after all of that, I guess your education campaign failed those individuals, but who cares?
Yeah.
Let them. They're paying so much in taxes for it. Let them go.
Despite what they think in New Zealand, you can't protect people from themselves. And Sheila, before we get more into this, I think we have a little clip of this policy being announced.
Okay.
We need a dramatic shift in the environment to denormalise smoking. It will take a multifaceted approach and bold evidence-based measures to be smoke-free. We want to make sure young people never start smoking, so we are legislating for a smoke-free generation by making it an offence to sell or supply tobacco products to those aged 14 when the law comes into effect. As they age, they and future generations will never legally be able to purchase tobacco, because the truth is there is no safe age to start smoking. We need a dramatic...
Crikey. Do they say crikey in New Zealand? Sheila, a couple of things. One is, I truly think this is a solution in search of a problem. I was looking at the stats about smoking in New Zealand. 10 years ago, 2011, 18% of the population, the general population, were smokers. Today, it is 11.6%. So more than a 6% decline in less than a decade. That is phenomenal. Here's another issue, though. When you start, looking at the stats, cherry picking who's smoking and who isn't. Look at the natives of New Zealand. Maori, 29%. So virtually almost 3 times the national average. For the Pacifica natives, 18%. Now, with all this truth and reconciliation narrative that's going on now, how does a predominantly white government go to the natives and say, sorry, you're not smoking. You simply are not. It's bad for your health. How does that jive with the whole, dumping on the colonization of other lands, imperialism, etc.? It sounds like more imperialism to me. The other thing too, Sheila, it's the slippery slope argument. Today, it is cigarettes that, yes, used as directed, can shorten or end your life prematurely. But what about other things? How about fatty French fries at the fast food restaurant? What about alcohol? We know that there are problems and even deaths. Pardon me?
High fructose corn syrup. It's in everything. Yeah.
Well, closer to home, what about cherry cheesecake? Premier Ford ain't going to like to see that on the ban list, let me tell you. So where do we draw the line? And right now, I can tell you there are groups. You know how I don't know what the situation is in Alberta per se, Sheila, but I know in Ontario, convenience stores, gas stations, they can't show the cigarettes that are behind these doors. And you got to tell the clerk to open it up, and invariably they're opening several doors trying to find the right cigarette. There are groups right now, Sheila, that are advocating that same system for candy bars, to put them out of the sight of children, and that you'd have to ask for them. You can't, because if you see the crunchy bar there and it's at eye level of a 6-year-old, it's an impulse buy, and that's bad for his or her health. So again, where do we stop this? And what does that government tell the native population that, sorry, mate, you're right out of luck if you want to buy a cigarette? And going back to your original point, if you think cigarettes are going to ever disappear in New Zealand or anywhere else in the world, thanks to the black market, which is thriving here in Ontario, Sheila, because of the tax threshold on legal cigarettes, well, you have another thing coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when Justin Trudeau legalized marijuana, it didn't put your local weed dealer out of business at all. He doesn't charge the taxes. And yeah, you are right. This is colonialism. This is a bunch of white saviors in government telling the Indigenous population that they know better what's better for them, and they should make the mind up for the Indigenous population. And this war on cigarettes, especially in North America, for a lot of our Indigenous people, tobacco use is part of a spiritual ceremony. And so you are potentially taxing and banning, if this comes here, and it will, because it's a bad idea, it's a bad progressive idea, so it's only a matter of time. You're banning some of their cultural and spiritual practices. And the reason I was furiously Googling is because I am 99% sure that in New Zealand, they have supervised drug injection facilities.
Yes.
And so on one level, the government is facilitating this behavior, not just turning a blind eye or taxing it, but actually facilitating a bad behavior that causes the dissolution of families, crime, severe health outcomes, and more often than not, death. The government facilitates this, but is banning this other, far less dangerous activity that provides tax revenue.
And Sheila, you just popped an idea into my head. When this is rolled out, I don't think I'll be surprised if I see an exemption to the native population, or at least turning a blind eye to enforcing the law. I can tell you in Ontario, if you go down to Brantford, if you go to the reserve there, that is like the Las Vegas strip of smoke shops. Every single rule under the smoke-free tobacco law, right, or the Smoke-Free Tobacco Act, I should say, and the ostensible policy reason for that is the same as New Zealand: keep cigarettes out of the hands of children. Every single law is broken there. They sell cigarettes to minors. You can smoke in the smoke shops. The cigarettes aren't stocked behind, veiled shelves. There's advertising, open advertising of cigarettes. Like I said, every single section. And when you go to the government, as I have, when you go to the Ontario government, they say, well, this is a federal matter, and the federal matter says, no, it's an Ontario matter, and then they say, well, it's really finance, it's not the health ministry, and it's like like in a circus of everybody absolving responsibility, and that is where the black market is thriving. Technically, only a native with a native status card is allowed to go and buy those cigarettes. But you can go, as I have, go on the reserve. You will see tons of people that live off reserve. Because you know what? When you are getting, Sheila, up to a 90% discount, and that's for the really cheap, baggy cigarettes, as they call it. Well, why wouldn't you go? And meanwhile, if the variety store that sells a pack of cigarettes to a minor, and the government does these sting setups where they get a minor who looks older to go in, it's basically 3 strikes and you're out. You're going to lose your livelihood if you lose your right to sell cigarettes. So again, the hypocrisy is off the charts.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that I'm mad about there. I'm not in favor of all the taxes on cigarettes. I'm not in favor in all the rules on where you can smoke cigarettes. I think leave smokers alone. They know it's bad and they're generally polite about it. They know that non-smokers like me, we don't like the smell. They go stand far away. Mostly, they govern themselves. The only thing that bothers me there is the double standard. That's the only thing. If you want to go to a casino and there's a casino that has smoking everywhere, and I don't like that, I'll go to a different casino. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'll let my dollars do the talking. I just don't like the double standard. We already did the Rebel store. We already talked about that. I think before we move along, we should say goodbye to our friends on YouTube, but not goodbye, but see you in a minute, because we're going to talk about things that YouTube says are too hot for your delicate little brains to handle. So I'm so annoyed by how paternalistic they are.
YouTube, I think, has a lot of New Zealand government types working there.
Oh, just a bunch of Karens working there saying, I can't think about that, can't talk about that. Those people, they're too dumb to handle that. They can't think about those things on their own. So it's just a bunch of scolds and nannies. It's like the parish council down there.
We don't want to trigger any students
with my parish council.
So we'll give a couple of steamboats. Well, speaking of which, who are you picking in the Grey Cup this Sunday, or does anyone care anymore, Sheila?
No, I don't watch professional sports.